The unsurpassed, penetrating and perfect truth is seldom met with, even in 100,000 myriad kalpas. Now we can see and hear it. We can remember and accept it. I vow to make the Buddha's truth one with myself. Homage to the Buddha, homage to the Dharma, homage to the Sangha. Today I'm going to talk about vigilance. The word vigilance comes from vigil, which apparently in Latin means awake or alert, paying attention. People usually think of vigilance as being alert to danger, something horrible is going to happen, I better be vigilant. Something happening outside of ourselves, something happening out there. But there's also an inner vigilance, being aware of what's going on within ourselves. And it implies a kind of guarding, a restraint, a self-discipline. Today we celebrated the festival of Achalanatha, as those of us who are here know. And I talked to some of the monks, I asked, well, what does he mean to you? And they gave me sundry answers. Well, for those who don't know Achalanatha, who was maybe my favorite bodhisattva, actually he's a king of light. Technically he's not a bodhisattva, but he's an aspect of Kanzeon, Avalokiteshvara, the compassionate bodhisattva. There's a whole story about that, which I won't go into because I've said it many, many times. But there he is, he's sitting on a rock, a hard, dry rock, all by himself, seemingly, in the middle of a hard, dry desert. And he's got flames, burning flames right behind him. And we imagine he's sitting right in the midst of these flames. And these are the flames of greed, anger, and ignorance. Greed, hate, and delusion. He's just sitting there, and he holds a sword of vigilance, a sword of wisdom. There are other aspects to that sword. But anyway, he's got the sword in one hand and a rope of the precepts in the other. He's holding his sword, and he's holding, actually it's the other way, he holds his sword in his right hand, and the rope he's holding out to us, the rope of the precepts for us to take and use. And there are all sorts of aspects of Achalanatha. I've talked about him many times, and all sorts of aspects to his iconography, but I won't go into that all. So as I said, I asked some of the monks what Achalanatha means to them, and had a whole host of answers. Many of them said immovable, because his name means the immovable one, Achalanatha, the one who does not move. And that's one of his main attributes. And determination, guarding. There's another aspect. And one said vigilance. So I thought, let's talk about vigilance. Well, the word vigilance can sound pretty heavy, even harsh sometimes. Vigilance sounds kind of, grim and unmoving, unyielding. But actually it doesn't have to be like that. Achalanatha doesn't move, but it doesn't mean he's harsh or heavy. In fact, it works much better if we're vigilant without being harsh and heavy, but if we practice it with gentleness. Our Achalanatha looks pretty fierce. He doesn't smile a whole lot, but I've never seen him smiling. But in fact, as I said, he's an aspect of compassion, an aspect of Avalokiteshvara. And we need to remember that, because that fierce determination is actually compassion, which helps us. He always has a plait of hair coming down on his left side, and this symbolizes compassion, like coming down to help us. And he has always jewels and ornaments and stuff to show he's not just a heavy guy, but he has this beautiful, kind side as well. And he's not just sitting there all by himself, being concerned about his own mind. I'm just being vigilant about myself. He's there for us. He's there to help us. He holds out his rope of the precepts to us. Compassion comes down to us. He's not just there all by himself. He's there with us. With us. Well, for Achalanatha, vigilance means watching the mind, not watching what's going on outside and making sure everything's okay. He's not not like that. It's watching the mind, his inner fires, as it were, watching what the mind gets up to. He's sitting on his hard rock amidst his flames of greed, hate and delusion, as I said. And he's sitting still, the immovable one. He's not judging his mind. He's not trying to stamp out the flames. He's just sitting still in the midst of it. And he's not putting more wood on the fire either. He's just not nourishing the flames of greed, anger and delusion. He's just sitting there, just sitting there. And this sounds so simple, and it's really hard just to do it. Just simply sit there with what goes on in our mind. To watch the mind, to see the kinds of thoughts that go through it, the thoughts that it grabs onto, and doesn't want to let go, and not to judge, not to try to get rid of our thoughts, the thoughts we don't like, and not to nourish the thoughts that we like and enjoy, or that we take refuge in, our old feelings of inadequacy or whatever it might be, that feel like an old coat that you're used to. Oh, I'm used to this feeling and I don't want to let it go. Even if it's unpleasant, we will often hold on to our old states of mind and not be willing to let them go. And when we watch our mind, we see our tendencies. A wise monk once said, when you wake up in the morning, look and see what your mind does right off. As soon as you wake up, where does it go to? Do you immediately wake up snarling with rage, or worried about everything, or full of despair or despondency? What is that? Because that kind of gives you a clue to your habitual mind state, which you may not always be aware of because it seems so familiar. And when you do that, oh, look at this. It's quite instructive. And it's just an indication of our habitual tendency. It's not a judgment. Judgment doesn't help. Just to see, oh, I seem to be a chronically cheerful person. Not all of us are like that. Or I seem to have this tendency to constant despair. First thing I wake up, oh God, everything's so awful. How come I get to take the next breath? Never mind get out of bed. Never mind live through the day. Or whatever it might be that we tend to go to see that. Ah, look at that. That's what my mind does. And then we see that. We can see what we have to deal with. We may not even have been aware of this habitual tendency because it's so pervasive, We might not know that there are other ways to see things. Maybe this is how life is. Everybody's like this. Maybe everybody feels dreadful all the time, If we're habitually gloomy, you may think this is how life is. Grim reality, Nothing about cheerful reality. Who's ever heard of that? Tribal societies, I read some years ago, when they went to, tribes that had never seen people from outside, well, maybe they saw each other's tribes, but white people, they hadn't seen white people. And it was observed that some tribal societies were chronically frightened and angry, always afraid of everything. And, they're the sort of people who would capture skulls to surround themselves with, to protect them from the evil spirits, which were there everywhere. You knew their enemies were there, the evil spirits were there, and everything was just awful and frightening. And then just down the road, there'd be another society that wasn't like that at all. They'd be habitually friendly and not afraid of everything and have a much more positive attitude. I thought, how interesting that is. How interesting that is. You can have a whole society where everybody thinks this is how life is, this is how we are, this is how it has to be. Who's going to change anything? But then somebody else, not that far away, so presumably in somewhat similar conditions, has a totally different view, Very interesting. So, it kind of goes to show that a lot of it is just what we habitually have, maybe what we're raised with, maybe, maybe our background, the family we come from, if they're all gloomy and depressed, maybe we are gloomy and depressed, or not. Maybe we think, I'm not going to be gloomy and depressed, I'm going to do something different. But everybody has their background, their environment, the things they're born with, our karma, the things we come into this very life with. Some of us are born purple and screaming. I was one of them. Some are born cheerful, placid, quiet, nice babies that don't wake up their parents every 5 minutes at night. And everybody comes in with their own stuff. And we also nourish certain things. And if we're vigilant, we can see what our mind is getting up to. We have our habitual hooks, the things we grab onto. It's not just our pervasive background state of mind, but the things we habitually latch onto, the things that, something to get annoyed about, look at that, look at that, look at that, or something to get worried about, always, if we're a worrywart, we always find something to worry about. We all have times when everything seems to annoy us, and other times when nothing bothers us at all. It's all our state of mind. We all remember times like this. Sometimes you just got out of bed on the wrong side, as they might say. Sometimes you're just crabby about everything. Or another time nothing bothers us at all, just water off a duck's back, everything is just fine, because of our state of mind. And if we can see these tendencies, we can work with them. If we know we have a habitual angry hook, or an irritable hook, or a worry hook, then we can allow for that. Look, here I am, I'm worrying again. Do I really need to worry about this? Maybe it won't happen. Maybe I don't need to worry. Maybe everything is okay, despite my best efforts. Or, do I need to get annoyed about that thing? Would I be annoyed if it was somebody I didn't find annoying anyway? So many things that we just add our own stuff to them. And actually, we may not need to. We don't need to. And if we see these things, we can work with them. But we have to see them with kindness. As they say, don't believe everything you think. Some people say, don't believe anything you think. Don't believe all the feelings that arise, all those feelings that come up. They seem so convincing. Just don't assume this is ultimate reality, And sitting still with vigilance, sitting still with our thoughts and feelings, helps us to see them more clearly. And it helps us not to be so reactive. If we're angry, and we know we're angry before we even say anything, or we don't have to yell at somebody or slam the door or even nurse a grievance, we can see, I'm getting really annoyed about this. Do I need to react in this way? Or can I at least keep my mouth shut? Or can I maybe just even let it go? Maybe it isn't a big deal. If it was somebody else, would it bother me? We don't have to give in to our selfish impulses at the expense of somebody else, whether it's a grabbing thing, or a hating thing, an angry thing, or a worry thing that then we leak out to everybody else. We should be worrying about this, If we see these things, if we're vigilant, we see them, and without all that judgment, it really helps us to work with them and to not be completely enslaved to them. Achalanatha is one of the kings of light, Myo-o, Fudo Myo-o. Myo-o means great light being. He brings light into dark places. He lives in this dark, dry, deserty place, and it always looks kind of dark. But he brings light. Even the flames bring a certain kind of light, but maybe not quite the light you want. There's the dark places in our own minds, and vigilance, the vigilance of Achalanatha, and the sitting still and just looking. When there's light, we can see. Light doesn't discriminate. Light just lights up everything. No matter what it is, it shines on everything impartially. It doesn't choose, I like this nice thing over there, I'm going to shine on that. It shines on everything that it can reach. And this is what we try to do, to see without partiality, to see everything that may be there in our own mind, whether we like it or not. To see what's there. Some of the things in our mind are nice. It's not all, misery and hatred and anger and depression and all that. This, generosity and kindness and love and warmth and friendship and all those things, they're all there too. We can see those as well, not just the dark side. But to sit with vigilance and without judgment and allow that light to just shine on everything, then it helps us to see what's there and what we need to do. Or may need to do. The clouds of judgment and criticism that cloud our mind, we can just let them go and see, let the light shine without discrimination, without partiality. Then we can do what we need to do. Watching what our mind does and keeping to the precepts. As I said, Achalanatha holds out the rope of the precepts to us. He's not pushing it on us, he's not forcing us. Here it is, take it if you want it. Because this is the way to end suffering. The precepts that bind us in some ways but liberate us really. When we keep to the precepts, we free ourselves from suffering. And he's holding this out to us to take if we would like, you know. And vigilance helps us to keep to those precepts and to see what we're doing. There's a story about Ajahn Mun. Ajahn Mun was a great Theravada master, great renown in Thailand, one of the old forest masters. He essentially revived the old forest tradition in Thailand, known for his fierceness and his great dedication to keeping to the precepts and being really strict, you know. He was the one who exhorted his disciples when they had malaria. Don't just lie there like a foot-wiping rag, get up and sit, you know. Well, they asked Ajahn Mun about the precepts, and he says, I keep one precept, the precept of mind. Because when you keep that precept of mind, and you watch what your mind does, all the other 250 precepts he had fall into place. Because if you're keeping that precept of mind, you're not going to give into anger or selfishness or all the things that, you know, and even the little precepts that the Theravadins keep. It helps you to keep all of those because you're paying attention, you're being vigilant. Vigilant over the mind. I keep one precept, the precept of mind. I really like that. Watching what the mind does, watching where it goes, seeing our weaknesses, where our mind drifts off to, you know. Then we can guard against them. We notice when we're starting to get upset, or when we're getting distracted, you know, or we're worrying about something. Distractions. Where does our mind go to? What is our habitual distraction of choice? Do we go thinking about movies, books, sex, climbing mountains, power, whatever it might be, our children, our families, which is all very understandable. Where does our mind go when we're distracting ourselves? You know, very interesting to see where our mind likes to spend its time. We are not our mind. I said this before, and it's extremely profound. We are not our mind. Mind is just one of the 6 sense organs. Eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, mind. Body means just a physical sensation. So we see, eye, ear, we hear, nose, we smell, tongue, we taste, body, we feel, and mind, we think. It's not any more important than our nose. Although it may lead us astray more than our nose might. We usually feel that our mind is who we are, that I am my mind, but actually we're not. And it's so helpful to think like this, to realize, even if we can't believe it, to consider that it might be the case that I am not my mind. This crazed little brain here, this is not my whole me, you know, there's more going on than that. Oh, thank God for that. Because we don't have to think I'm an angry person, or I'm a selfish person, or whatever it might be. We don't have to label us in that way. We may have anger, everybody has anger come and go. We have selfish impulses, we all have them. But they're not our true nature. They're just our mind. And we can give in to them, or we can restrain ourselves. When we're still, and we're not all caught up in all the stuff that goes through our mind, there's a bright awareness that's there underneath all that stuff. When the mind isn't cluttered up with resentment or planning or worry or fear or, you know, whatever it might be that fills our little brain, distraction. When you're still, and all that kind of just comes and goes in the background, there's that bright awareness. It's kind and friendly. There's a certain friendly quality to it. a gentleness, a compassion. And we can find it hard to believe that that nature is really there because of all the stuff. But actually, so it is. It is there. This is why we try to sit still, so that we may allow that to come into the ascendancy and not be just pulled off by all this other stuff. And this is so much closer to our true nature, this bright, gentle mind of awareness, underneath all the rest of that stuff. And even if you don't feel that it's so, if you just do our best to sit still, without judging our efforts, without judging what goes through that mind, because it is not me, it's just not my whole nature, it's just one of those sense organs. I don't have to identify with all that stuff. But if you can sit still with all that, without judging, just like the light shines, without partiality, then we can begin to trust this underlying stillness and awareness that is there. And that is closer to our true nature. Our endless self-concern takes a back seat for a little bit. It's not right in our face. This endless self-concern which sees me and my stuff and my concerns and my worries and my fears and my hatreds and my loves and all things. To let that go for a bit, because we're just the same as everybody else. We're just part of everybody else. We're not separate in any way. And when we let go of some of that stuff that seems to kind of enclose us, then we begin to see better that actually I'm not a separate being. I'm just part of that large brightness. Even if we don't feel it or see it, it's there anyway. And to just trust it and to return to it as best we can. When we get distracted, we come back. We get pulled off by something else, we come back. Just to take refuge in that as best we can, whenever we can, whether we're sitting in meditation or living our life, doing stuff, talking to somebody, not getting along with somebody, having a difficult time, really worried and afraid, or everything's wonderful and I'm completely happy for 5 minutes. It's to come back to that underlying stillness is a wonderful thing. Our worries and concerns are no huge thing, Vigilance helps us to do that, just paying attention to what's going through our mind, but without getting caught up in it, just saying, oh yes, here I am distracted, let's come back. But not getting too distracted by the distraction. What was I thinking about? What was that? Why was that? Just letting it go. Vigilance can sound a little bit heavy-handed, as I said, but it's not, because it's a gentle awakeness, really. This kind of vigilance that Achalanatha points to. It's a gentle awakeness, awareness, paying attention to what's going on right now. Not rigidly, I've got to pay attention, I can't move my, but gladly, because it's what our heart wants to do. We actually want to be present here, we want to be paying attention. And when we do, oh, what a relief, here I am, just here, with this moment, with all its joys and sorrows and all the things that come our way, right here in this moment. There is no other, there is nothing else going on except this moment. For me, for everybody else in the world, all of the things that everybody's doing, there is just this moment. The fears of the future, the worries, the anxieties about the past or the regrets, all that stuff, just to be here in this very moment. Achalanatha, in this very moment, the present moment. Achalanatha is also a guardian. He's the guardian of the temple. And at night, one of our monks goes around as the heavenly guardian. And one of the things they do, apart from they seal all the gates, they bless the whole temple, and they go to the Achalanatha shrine and do a ceremony for him, thanking him for keeping the temple peaceful during this day and asking him to keep it peaceful during the night and the following day. He shows us how to guard ourselves. He guards the temple, but he also shows us how to guard ourselves by sitting still, how to protect ourselves from harm by keeping to the precepts with vigilance, paying attention, and above all, being still, sitting still in the midst of all conditions. The immovable one, that's what he is, the immovable one who does not move no matter what's going on. All the conditions that arise, whether it's the flames of greed, anger, ignorance, fear and all that within our own mind, or whether it's fires of conditions, fires of impermanence burning without, or the things that come and go in our own lives, or those external conditions, sitting still with all of that. All the things that come our way, gain and loss, joy and sorrow, health and sickness, life and death, all these things come our way for all of us. And to sit still with faith and trust and that gentle brightness of heart, to accept them all as they come, not to worry about them. They'll come when they come, but they may not be the way we think, and when they come, we just deal with them. To get all worried about things ahead of time doesn't help, but to just take things as they come, do the best we can with them, to keep coming back to that bright stillness, that gentleness that underlies everything, with faith and patience and acceptance of whatever comes our way. That's Ajalanatha's teaching for us today. Thank you.